If Garry Oak trees are a feature of your neighborhood, you've probably been hearing the thunk of those acorns hitting the roof of your house or your car. Maybe you've been dodging them on the sidewalks, or if you're cycling on the bike lanes. It's turning out to be another plentiful year for acorns. The phenomenon happens every few years. And for more on what exactly is going on, we're joined by Ryan Senechal. He is president of the Garry Oak Meadow Preservation Society based in Greater Victoria. And Ryan's been good enough to join us now in studio. Great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good afternoon, Jason.
So what is going on with these acorns this year?
So this year we are having maybe above average crop of acorns, and we're seeing an uptake of interest.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you mentioned, the acorns hitting the roof, hitting the road, being quite visible. So we're hearing a lot of interest, basically, on what is the mechanism behind all of the acorns.
Yeah, and so you mentioned it's above average. How often do we see acorns in these numbers in our communities?
So a colleague that's based in Saanich as well, a forester named Kevin Brown, he's actually done some pretty good research on this. There's not a lot of research to look at specifically to South Vancouver Island around the production of Garry Oak acorns. Yeah. He was able to look at about 24 years of data with 160 trees on 17 sites between Greater Victoria and all the way north as far as Courtenay.
Okay.
And as part of a larger study in the Garry Oak range, which runs from Northern California as far as Northern Vancouver Island, or mid Vancouver Island rather, with a couple small populations in Yale and Sumas on the Lower Mainland. His study is focused on South Vancouver Island, and they studied the production and created like a grading scheme effectively to measure each year and understand what the cycle was of this phenomenon, which is commonly referenced as masting.
Yeah.
And masting is the coordinated variation of seed production for a given species across a region. And I always get the question, is this a mast year?
Yes, exactly.
And there isn't actually a panel of experts convening to determine, is this a mast year? I like the term that Kevin Brown has produced from his study, in that he would refer to it as a good year.
Right. Fair enough.
And typically we're looking at about a 2 to 5 year cycle based on the information gleaned from his study.
Okay. And that checks out, because what was it, 2023, that we had quite a few? Last year, I don't recall seeing any.
Yeah, exactly. 2023 was probably a banner year.
Yeah.
There was a lot of interest from the media and from the public on that one. It was quite extensive, and we're actually seeing the results 2 years later of a lot of seed succession in natural areas from that flood of acorns hitting the soil and overwhelming predation, basically, from squirrels and mice and birds.
And ostensibly, when we talk about the production of seeds for a tree or any sort of flora, often it's when they're stressed or they're worried about reproducing. So can it be caused by, say, environmental stresses that can create, these so-called good years for acorns?
Yeah, absolutely. It actually, there are so many factors involved.
Yeah.
Kevin Brown had pointed out that it's about a 15-month process from the weather conditions across that time frame that affect the overall crop. It's also genetics. It's also physical locations. So the trees on Mount Ptolemy or Christmas Hill are going to be, they have less soil, they have harsher conditions, so we get less crop. Down low in the valley bottoms is where we see the bumper crops all over the road and the sidewalks and so on. Now, there are also weather conditions during pollination, and then stressors like longer and longer periods of drought, and perhaps even the heat dome may have had an impact, and it takes a while for that to show up in the production of crop. And then genetics from tree to tree within the stand as well, we can see variation. So lots of variance.
Yeah, very much so. I can imagine what an exciting time of the year this time is for squirrels. But what about from people? Do you hear people often begrudgingly, walking through the streets, dodging these acorns? Or what's your sense as to how people feel about it?
Yeah, it's one of the trade-offs with the species. We get so many utilities from Garry Oaks in the urban environment, and they are They are remnants in large part from management of Lekwungen and Wasanich people, through management through fire regimes, and we still have remnant old trees that predate settlement that we get to experience, and they're incredible hosts for a range of species, over 1,500 unique species associated at some point in their life with Garry Oaks in particular. They provide lots of utilities like shade and rainwater flow reduction on the surface, and they're really uniquely identifying this area as home for many people. And I'm obviously quite biased, and I love them, but they also do have a disservice effect on some people. Obviously, collecting in gutters and on sidewalks, it can reduce accessibility, and particularly if you have mobility challenges, and we're quite sensitive around that. And communities like City of Victoria, they have more capacity to be able to maintain those sidewalks and manage those trade-offs, so we can get all the other benefits. But those benefits aren't distributed equally across all municipalities. So it can be a value to offer a little bit of support to your neighbor at this point in time if they don't have that ability, because it really hurts to lose out on all the other benefits we get from the trees, and it's death by 1,000 cuts. If we're removing one tree here and there, it adds up cumulatively over time, particularly where there are larger trees.
Well, I know your society collects acorns this time of the year. Tell us why.
That's right. Garry Oak Meadow Preservation Society is a nonprofit organization based in Greater Victoria. And part of the mission at the onset, in the origins of our organization, which dates back to 1992, was to steward the local population of Garry Oaks. And we do that by way of our nursery operation. And we reach out to the community this time of year, particularly when we have a crop like this, and ask for donations of Garry Oak acorns. So confirming, one, that it's a Garry Oak and hopefully an older tree, and is productive. And then we just ask that you're doing a scan, a physical check for damage to the acorns, or the presence of weevil, which you can see an entry hole. And some staining. So it's just a visual process, and then we do what's called a float test. All of this is on our website. It gives instructions.
What's the float test, though? That sounds interesting.
So after you've done the visual screening, you put all the acorns into a bucket of water, and the acorns that sink are viable effectively.
Interesting. Okay, so anything that floats up, you don't need those.
That's right.
And then what do people do with these viable acorns?
So best case scenario is if you're fortunate enough to have some land to plant on, when you have a bumper crop like this, just effectively bombard a space with acorns, and hopefully the squirrels won't chew through all of them, and they actually will extend a radicle and a taproot very quickly. And that's your best case scenario, is use the acorns, and you can put some fencing around to protect perhaps. But if you don't have that capacity, or you miss out on it, you can get a seedling from us. We grow these seedlings for stewarding the urban forest on South Vancouver Island and in the Gulf Islands.
Great stuff. Well, Ryan, so good to see you today. Thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jason.
That is Ryan Senechal, who is the president of the Garry Oak Meadow Preservation Society in Greater Victoria and a lecturer at UBC's Faculty of Forestry. And as Ryan mentioned, you can learn a lot more about the work that the society does and how to check those acorns as well by going to their website. It's garryoak.info. Well, chances are